or wait till the end or something. All right, we're live on YouTube now. All right. All right, Colonel Rasco, thanks for tuning in. Brooke, Carol Covert, thank you. It was good seeing you at the first in-person event we had. Jane, Mary, Cynthia De Leon, Claire, Abhishek, thank you for tuning in. As we're getting ready to start, feel free to let us know where you are watching from, what business or university you're affiliated with, if you've had experience or are interested in the Fulbright program. It's your time to brag if you would like. And you could use the chat feature for that. Andrea Garcia, one of our board members, Bill Rasco, another board member, and Peggy Pace, our chair of the board, is joining us. San Antonio Public Library. Thank you, Cynthia. I was just there about a week ago.
I see some friends. Hi, Jane. Hi, Brooke.
Their team, Pauline. All right.
Everyone at UHD is supposed to be in an all-day faculty retreat today. I don't think I'll have my support team here. They're all at a faculty retreat.
Well, if we do see them, we know they're not paying attention, right?
This will be more interesting, I'm sure.
Jane Richards, thanks for watching. Our board member, John J.J. Casey, we just had an event with him. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll give it another few seconds and we'll begin our program. Dr. Burr, thank you for tuning in. All right. And if you're watching on YouTube and our Facebook page, thank you for also tuning in via those channels to watch. We appreciate your support. For those of you who just signed on, we will begin here in a few seconds. Please use the chat function at your pleasure to make comments, tell us who you're with, where you're tuning in from. If you have questions, please throw those in the Q&A. We will also be keeping a lookout for questions on social media as well. So please utilize those functions as you see fit. And if you want to share the video, you could go to the World Affairs Council fan page and you could share it on your page, and those who are your friends can watch you or the panelists and also the program. All right. All right, let us start. I want to thank everybody who is watching, who has tuned in for this really neat, informative program with some dynamic guests and who you will hear from shortly. I see several of you who have tuned in who attended our first in-person event at Club Giroux with Foreign Service Officer Philip Roskamp and Ambassador Moreno. Thank you, that was very well attended. We do have another in-person hybrid program coming up here next week at the Roosevelt Library, part of our book club series, 100 Sweet Promises by Sefir Haddad. We're partnering with Musical Bridges. There's limited seating. And we're also taking everyone's safety into account as we do that event at the Roosevelt Library. Tune into our website to register and to sign up. Of course, we can't do any of this without your support, whether it's through your membership. If you're a member, thank you. If you'd like to become a member, click on the link and find out how. And of course, any gift that is significant to you, we would appreciate your support. And that link is also available in the chat room. I want to introduce the panel very quickly. Dr. Bianca Schonberg is the Executive Director for Education Abroad and Scholar Services at the University of Houston in Clear Lake. She's also a Fulbright Russia alumnus. Kathleen Mulligan, she's joining us from Maine today, and she's an actress, a vocal coach, and a professor at Ithaca College. She was awarded the Fulbright grant to Kerala, India for her project Finding Women's Voices. She's also she was a Fulbright specialist in Pakistan as well, and is now the president of the Fulbright Association of Central New York. Pauline Aviard is the founder and president of the e-commerce business Sucra, which showcases Tunisian creatives through their designs and goods. She is a product of Tufts University and spent a year in Tunisia on a Fulbright scholarship. The last panelist, who is the visionary behind this program, thank you to Dr. Candace Tenbrink. She's an assistant professor of management at the University of Houston downtown. As a Fulbright scholar, she researched corporate rejuvenation and innovation in Poland. She's a product of the Bauer School at University of Houston, and she also has her MBA, as well as a product of Michigan State University. And finally, I want to introduce you to our moderator, Dr. Trey Gwynn. He currently serves as the president of the Fulbright Association, the San Antonio chapter, while continuing as an active board member for the national organization. He's an associate professor and department chair of communication at the University of Incarnate Word, one of our favorite schools right here in San Antonio. And before I turn it over to Dr. Gwynn, I do want to thank Dr. Patricia Burr, who is on our board of directors. She has received Fulbright awards to Mexico, China, Kuwait, and Vietnam. She's the past president of the San Antonio chapter and founding member of the Fulbright Association here, and also the program chair of the Southwest Fulbright Symposium, and a mentor of mine. And so I appreciate her for tuning in. Dr. Gwynn, take it away and let us learn about what Fulbright's all about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Armin. I really appreciate it. For our guest today, and for anybody interested in knowing, I have 3 kids, and I'm usually trying to teach them good things like, make your bed, eat your dinner first, then have your dessert. But every once in a while, I'll sort of switch it up and I'll let them have dessert before dinner. And so similarly, right now, I'd like for us, at least in our hearts or minds, to have a little dessert and do something sweet and say thank you to our panelists before we even have the chance of having this delicious meal of a time together. So if you are tuning in, whether you want to type it into a chat somewhere or whether you just want to snap and clap from wherever you are, join me in saying thank you to our panelists. And also thank you to Armin, and many thanks to you, Armin, and our friends at the World Affairs Council. We appreciate your time and your effort to host this event. As well, we know that you all work year-round to host important events that I hope that you'll be advertising today, and we thank you for that. In a moment, we're going to invite our panel of Fulbrighters to share about their unique experiences. Before we do, I'd like to express a brief word of gratitude to the State Department for their support of important work internationally, such as the efforts through the Fulbright Association. As we see growing challenges and concerns across the globe, we are reminded just how important the very mission and vision of the Fulbright is. The Fulbright Association respects all people and cultures. We value diversity, and we are committed to international education and mutual understanding. Our members and our alumni, like those here today, promote a peaceful and interconnected world. We strive to extend the Fulbright tradition of education, advocacy, and service. And I'm a proud lifetime member of the Fulbright Association. And that is partly because through the association, I have the privilege to interact with people like our esteemed panelists today. Also because through the association, I have the great privilege of sharing time with you, our audience, people who have dedicated time on a Tuesday to hop on yet another Zoom call, another one. You've chosen to be here. So you, our audience, we know you could be somewhere else, doing something else, yet you chose to come and party with us for this hour. And I think that's very cool. And it gives me hope that the kinds of challenges and opportunities we witness across the globe are in better hands. Now, speaking of our global society, today we have a panel of individuals who have served across the globe, from India and Pakistan, Poland to Russia and Tunisia and more. The panel today are Fulbrighters committed to the very principles our organization strives to live by and promote. So let's welcome them and learn about life as a Fulbrighter. And as we do, quick note to the audience, your participation in the chat through feedback and questions is welcome. So send them in as we go, and we will get to them as quickly as possible. So let's get started. In no particular order, other than the listing of names as I see them, I'd like to start by inviting Kathleen to introduce and share about herself and to give us just a brief preview of things we will learn from her today.
Great, thank you, Trey. And thank you to the World Affairs Council and to Armen and Candice for inviting me to be part of this today. I am often asked by new Fulbrighters, what advice do you have for me? And I always say what I learned from my own Fulbright experiences is when a door opens, walk through it. And that has really led to some wonderful, life-changing experiences for me. I am a professor of voice and speech at Ithaca College in their Department of Theater Arts, and I'm also a professional actress, a member of Actors Equity. And I was lucky enough to be awarded a Fulbright Scholar Grant to India in 2010 with my project Finding Women's Voices, focused on the empowerment of women through voice. And from that, I had to give a talk at a conference in India, and the executive director of Fulbright in Pakistan was at my talk, and she invited me to come to Pakistan as a specialist, a Fulbright specialist. And from my travels in those two countries, I started to hear stories about the partition of India and Pakistan in 1947. And I started to wonder if there was a way that I could use theater to help preserve and tell those stories about the experiences of not the people in textbooks, but quote unquote, everyday people, men, women, mothers, fathers, children, grandparents during that time. And I applied for and got a grant from the US Embassy in Islamabad. And with that support and with the support of the Fulbright Specialist Program, my husband and I were able to embark on my project called Voices of Partition. We worked with a wonderful theater in Islamabad called Theater Wali. And we collaborated with them to create an original piece of theater out of interviews with survivors of the partition of 1947. The resulting theater piece was called Dag Dag Ujala, which means This Stained Dawn. And we opened in Islamabad. We then were able to take the production with all of the actors to the US, and we performed in Boston, in Western Mass, at Ithaca College, at the US Department of State, and at George Mason University in Virginia. And I will say that of all of the work that I have done as an actor and an educator, this is the project that is closest to my heart and that I have found to be the most rewarding of my career. And my plans are to continue this project and create a companion piece with stories from the other side of the border. And I'm actually working on a Fulbright application right now to return to India, to Amritsar this time, which is right on the border of Pakistan, to work with students from colleges there to create a piece from interviews with survivors and their family members about the partition of 1947. So I think that's me.
Wow. Thank you, Kathleen. Really grateful to hear about your time and experiences. With that, let's turn our Zoom microphone to Pauline. Pauline, give us a preview of you and what we might learn from you today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pauline. I'm calling from San Francisco, California. And I want to first say thanks so much to World Affairs Council for inviting me to participate on this panel with these fellow Fulbrighters. I'm really excited to share about the Fulbright experience. So I did my Fulbright student fellowship to Tunisia. And for those who don't know, that's Tunisia's in North Africa, right on the Mediterranean Sea. And I did it from September of 2005 up until June of 2006. And it was just a few months after graduating from with a BA in art history from college. I was graduating from college. And I was specifically there to study ancient Roman mosaics, which are aplenty in Tunisia. And in addition to the research that I did in Tunisia, which was, at archaeological sites, in-person interviews with mosaic specialists, and studying at the libraries there, one of the great outcomes is that I cemented these lifelong friendships and connections there. And just to go back, the research that I did in Tunisia was then applied to a master's thesis. But the connections that I made there brought me back to Tunisia every couple of years. And it also led me to start my own business, Sucra, which is an online shop that showcases Tunisian entrepreneurs through their creations and designed goods. And it's really a way to shed a spotlight on the burgeoning community of entrepreneurs and creatives that have really emerged post-Arab Spring, which happened in 2010, which Tunisia was the country that really sparked the Arab Spring across the region. And it's now been a little over a decade since then. So the Fulbright ethos of fostering mutual understanding is really baked into my business because, Fulbright does it through international exchange program, and I do it through presenting Tunisian craftsmanship, but as well as all of these stories and the narratives of Tunisians, because I interview all of them, and that's all on the website, with learning about what Tunisia means to them. So it's a full circle here with Fulbright and Tunisia. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. I enjoyed hearing that. I wrote down friendships and business venture. I think sometimes people think Fulbright and they may think it's nerdy and academic or something, but the big words that were coming from you were friendship and business venture. That's really great. Thank you. With that, I'd like to invite Candace to share with us. Candace, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Trey. Well, another word, we're passing the baton back to the nerdy and academic. So my motivation for applying for a Fulbright actually wasn't so academic in a way. I grew up in a very small town, and it was very uniform. It was very homogenous. And I've always had this interest in learning about other cultures and wanting to immerse myself in them. And as such, before the Fulbright, I had traveled to probably, 45 different countries on my own. In other words, not with a previous job. So when I learned about Fulbright at a Fulbright little lunch and learn, I was amazed. I didn't know what it was. And it was amazing to find out that if you're a student like Pauline, or if you're an academic or someone in the community and you have a specialty in some area, you can apply for it. And I thought, you know what, this is cool. So I was very motivated by curiosity, and then their vision and mission, right, which was for mutual understanding. And so with that, I was wide open. And at the Lunch and Learn, I happened to be sitting next to Janis, who actually is Polish, and he's also a Fulbright scholar that went to Poland. And he basically took me under his wing and said, you know, Candace, you are going to go to Poland. You will win a Fulbright, and I'm going to introduce you to all of my friends. And he did. And so I'm very grateful for his mentorship and his belief in me. And let me pivot just a little bit about what I did in Poland. I was at the University of Gdansk up north. I was there to research and teach. And again, I was wide open. I basically, on the research, I could basically engage in anything that I have expertise in. So that was corporate rejuvenation and entrepreneurial firms. Most of the CEOs that I spoke with were in the software industry. And then as for teaching, it was plug and play, mostly strategy related, but also interesting note, this is my fourth career. So I used to work on Wall Street. So sometimes they would pull me in to talk about financial stuff or, you know, what's going on with corporate governance. So I was pretty flexible throughout the whole project. And then post Fulbright, I would say I have kept in touch with my Polish friends and with the Polish community. And I have built ties with the Polish community here in Houston. And so I'm just very thankful for the opportunity that Fulbright gave me to go to Poland and meet these new people and to engage in research and teach, and then to bring back that passion and enthusiasm here in Texas. So thank you.
Thank you, Candace. As you were sharing about what brought you into Fulbright, it sounded like that curiosity peaked through stories, and that was similar to what we had heard from Kathleen, I'm sure as well, with Pauline as well. But it's something about hearing other stories, raising your own curiosity, and that's a bit why we're here today, is to sort of share our stories. So thank you so much for that. Bianca, with that, I'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trey. And thank you again to the World Affairs Council of San Antonio for inviting me. This is an excellent panel. So my Fulbright was in Russia. And in my 20 years of experience in higher ed, my job has always been to create an appetite for internationalization. And similar to Candace, I've traveled all over the world, and I think I'm sitting at over like 43 countries, and the majority of them have been for personal, not for professional. So, you know, I consider myself very well traveled. And so with Fulbright, a lot of people, the one question I get is, why did you choose Russia? You know, I really wanted to connect with Russia's talent and have an opportunity for an exchange. And also the indigenous community in Russia is something that is very, very important to me, and something that is very difficult in order for the average person to connect to. So I wanted to really be able to open myself to new experiences. And I think Russia, again, is one of those places that people kind of struggle with trying to build a connection or trying to build partnerships. And I needed to understand how Russia and their educators specifically approach the 21st century when it comes to citizenship, foreign affairs, political issues, and things like that. Another thing is actually, how do the schools work, the system? Come to find out in the Russia program is that the school systems there are totally different than what you find here in the United States. It was so complex. Even Fulbright warned us ahead of time that you are going to have a hard time trying to digest and understand the school system, the education system there. But lastly, really creating a connection with Russian counterparts, learning more about the indigenous community, and exploring opportunities for my faculty. So I'm on the administrator side of the house, and it's sometimes very difficult to get opportunities such as the Fulbright, because we're not awarded the year off and things like that, because our work is totally constant. So I am so grateful that Fulbright has a award specifically for administrators. My work is 100% international. So that's from international students, working with international faculty coming into the United States, sending students abroad, and just creating faculty exchanges and things like that. But I was getting more and more faculty who are interested in Eastern Europe. And Russia is one of the places, once again, that is very, very difficult to tap into. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, my job is definitely to create an appetite for internationalization, but to be able to really forge and build these partnerships that would be sustainable. And similar to one of the other panelists, I did not know what Fulbright was until maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago. I was working at the University of Notre Dame. And I had to start attending a lot of Fulbright sessions, and my mind was blown. I was like, I have to be a Fulbrighter. I mean, this is like totally me. I know I can do this. I know I like would fit the mold, and I could be able to do exactly what is needed in order to execute partnerships, agreements, and things like that. So it wasn't until much later that I had an opportunity to really sit down and cultivate something that I thought that was going to be useful, not only for my institution, but also for me when it comes to my career and professional connections. Thank you.
Bianca, thank you. I loved when you said that is totally me. I'm hopeful that somewhere in this audience, someone is listening right now and he is hearing you all speak and is thinking, that's totally me. So if speaking of audience, if you're out there, give some private personal snaps and claps to our panelists, this incredible group. Also, feel free to start typing your thoughts, feedback, questions into the chat. We welcome that. But at this time, I want to dig in a little deeper on the experiences. And then I'm going to try to look for those questions. I'm going to be fishing them out of the chat. I want to make a connection here between our panelists, something that I think might be. I mentioned a dad of 3. I like to travel with my family. I find that there's the trip that I plan, and then there's the trip that actually happens. Sometimes that thing you were hoping for didn't pan out, like that picture in front of the Hollywood sign or something because a kid got sick. Or then sometimes you have a meaningful experience that you could have never foreseen. So I find this true to be true in my travel abroad for work as well. When you look back at your Fulbright panelist, does that sentiment resonate? The trip you planned versus the trip that was? And if so, what was that thing that didn't go as planned? And what was that thing that was extremely meaningful, but you never could have planned?
That's a good one. So if you don't mind me, I have to say with mine, I went in 2017, and that was right after the elections. And so it was a very interesting time for us to be in Russia. So first of all, I was under the seminar program. The seminar program for the Russia was a very small group. I believe there were like 6 of us, very small, intimate group. And it was, the itinerary was very rigorous, very, very rigorous. You were just on your feet, talking, making connections, presenting, things like that. But this was right after the first, so right after the US elections of President Trump, and then the Secretary of State was announced, which was Rex Tillerson. Rex Tillerson and the US State Department landed in Moscow when we were there, and everything shut down. So majority of our program, which was great, was totally outside of Moscow, and we were able to see the real Russia, as a lot of people like to say. But what happened is this, and it goes back to Russia and the US and just the political nuances. Our access to a lot of locations then became denied because there was issues going on right there. Right then, it was just days after the US had launched missiles against Syria. There were Russians on the ground in Syria. And we were just in the midst of all of this. And Fulbright and even some of the Russians who work for Fulbright were trying to figure out how to navigate us around the country. Passports were taken in between during our Fulbright program, but it was amazing because you really got to see, number one, really this complex political history between Russia and the US. You were on the ground witnessing that. I had the opportunity to talk to faculty and students about their thoughts about Russia and the US and tensions. Some clearly, felt like there was nothing going on, and others had very strong stances about it, which I loved. Being able to hear their voices and really to understand really how foreign policy really can create stronger partnerships. So now my understanding of Russia and their views of maybe the United States or the US involvement now leads me, when I'm working on projects with Russians to understand better maybe what they want out of it or how to approach certain situations. So it did not go as planned, but it was awesome. And I also have to say, again, I have traveled to so many countries. Russia probably was one of the most difficult countries I have. It is actually the number one country that I've traveled to that was the most difficult to navigate.
Thank you, Bianca. It must have been pretty powerful to witness such history. Candace, I see you came off mute.
So I'm giggling here. So I'm just going to be honest. my COVID happened during my Fulbright. So talk about unplanned, holy cow. But let's just take a step back because, you know, so I went to Poland, you know, very, very early before COVID started. And then all of a sudden I got this email saying that we're evacuating the country. You have to leave, get on a plane immediately. So that whole transition from, oh wow, I'm a Fulbright scholar, I'm getting into the middle of my research and my relationships, and you know the whole world is on lockdown was completely unplanned. But to pivot away from COVID, the couple of things that were unplanned was that in Poland, being a PhD is cool. I had no idea. In the United States, it seems like money is cool. If you're a capitalist and successful, you're pretty cool, or you're a celebrity and you're famous, you're cool. But in Poland, being a PhD was pretty cool. And I really enjoyed people coming up to me and talking about academic stuff. That was really interesting. Being part of that PhD celebrity, I actually got dragged around quite a bit. And I said yes to everything. It didn't matter what it was. I said yes. So I actually got to meet Lech Walesa. And that was completely unplanned. I didn't expect it. Just one morning, the head of the business school said, you know, hey, we're going to go to this meeting. And then, you know, I'm just like, sure, fine. I'll meet you there or whatever. And then, you know, these things just happen. So that was completely unplanned. And then in terms of other things being planned, I plan to go and be flexible and open-minded. And for anyone listening that wants to go on a Fulbright, I would say, in the United States, here in Houston, I'm not that flexible. I'm just not always that flexible. Things go wrong. I'm kind of like, really? Come on, that didn't need to happen that way. But when I was traveling abroad, even though I was living there, I had on my travel face, right? Like your game face. And my game face is, or the travel face is, I'm gonna eat anything. I don't care what it is. Sure, I'll try it. I'll drink anything, any time of the day. Sure, I'll try it. I'll go anywhere. Sure. You think that's great? I'm going to go with you and do it. And I also didn't. So that was all planned and that worked well. And I'll just say I had issues with everything, finding my apartment, figuring out the postal code, getting a bank account, and every single step of the way, I had helpful people and I was completely laid back. So it was kind of nice to take a vacation from my normal self here in the US. That was planned. Just one more thing I want to add, and I'll pass the baton is, and I'm sure you will all probably agree with us or have the same experience. I could not believe how kind people were. The kindness of the locals was astonishing, and I will be forever grateful to every Polish person I met when I was there, because my Polish sucks. It does. I can barely speak any Polish. Including pronouncing people's names very well. So their kindness was amazing. And on that, I pass the baton.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Candace, for sharing. I'll build off the question. So it's the same theme of the trip planned versus the trip that you could have never planned. But I want to add, using some of the language from Candace here, travel face, game face, and saying yes to anything. So as you maybe think through the original question, feel free to add any elements about your travel face, your game face, and that spirit of saying yes. Pauline?
So yeah, I mentioned earlier that I arrived in September of 2005, and I knew that, you know, in early October, Ramadan was going to start in Tunisia. I didn't quite know what to expect. I had talked to a few friends back at home, but you know, I landed in Tunisia, had to look for an apartment, ended up calling someone and finding 2 Tunisian women that I lived with. And I was ready to hit the ground running with my research. And then there was roadblock after roadblock when it came to getting access to a library or archives, or even getting access to a site that isn't public. So it definitely, coming in from the United States, just graduating from college where, you know, things are rigorous, productivity is essential. It was definitely a mind shift pretty quickly. And then Ramadan happened, and things were closed early. Difficulty finding, finding things that were open. So I shifted and I did what Candace did, was say yes to everything. So my neighbor was going on a road trip to, like, 6-hour road trip through the western part of Tunisia. Yeah, I'll go there. If we can just add 1 or 2 archaeological sites to the trip, let's do it. At the end of Ramadan, I went down to the hometown of my roommate and did the end of Ramadan with her and her family, which was mind-blowing and really an experience I had never done before. So I definitely, when it came to arriving in Tunisia and thinking, okay, I'm going to get this done and that done and XYZ, and I'm going to talk to this person, I had to pretty quickly adjust my expectations. And I think actually that is a skill that Fulbright experience gave me, is something that I actually approach a lot with my business. And I think Fulbright experience is entrepreneurial in a sense, because you have to quickly adapt and adjust and be open to new opportunities and change sort of your expectations. And I approach my business similar. You never know, like, well, COVID, we didn't quite know what was going to happen there. So we all have sort of adjusted, but with the business, I really had to change things up with that. So definitely, I have to say, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but the post office in another country, sometimes just that was a huge new lesson learned, where it's not lined up here in the United States. There's just a mosh pit of people, and you're just pacing back and forth saying, where do I go? Where do I go to find the line? But you do it and you learn, and you put aside all those kind of, this is how I used to do it, this is how I'm going to do it, and embrace a different culture and really step in line with how they're doing it there. I'm all for game face and saying yes to everything.
Thank you, Pauline. I like that. Embracing and adjusting. Embracing and adjusting. That's what I jotted down for you. Kathleen, did you want to share anything?
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. I don't have any huge thing to offer. Definitely, the first rule of improvisational theater is always say yes. And that's sort of the other part of my philosophy, besides walking through every door that's open to me. And but when after I got the Fulbright to India, I started doing all this research, and my husband and I bought all these books. My husband had lived in India for the first 6 years of his life, but he obviously didn't remember that much. And I remember meeting this colleague from Ithaca College who had been born in India. And I said to her, well, I've been reading this book, and I've read this book, and and she said, Kathleen, you could read every book in the world and you're still not going to be prepared. And she was right about that. It was just, everything was so different. And that idea of the travel face is just like, okay, I'm going with it. And wow, hopefully I'll just kind of fake it till I make it. And then this will all kind of make sense to me. And there's a lot of that I experienced. And I also, the first day that I landed in Islamabad, it wasn't until I got there that I found out, oh, it's Ramadan. And I had to learn a lot about that. But I don't know, you just sort of roll with whatever is dealt you.
Thank you, Kathleen. I want to sort of dig in a little deeper, especially using some of the great things y'all are sharing with us. I'm going to pick up from Pauline's statements of embracing and adjusting expectations. So you got to embrace the cultures and you got to adjust your expectations. It sounds like there was probably a lot of opportunity to do that while you were abroad and kind of serving your Fulbright. I'd love to know how serving a Fulbright has what you've embraced in life post Fulbright and how your career expectations or your life mindset has been adjusted post Fulbright. So how have the learnings and experiences shaped the life you now live? Kathleen?
Well, yeah, I mean, I always sort of tried to be a person who was in service, to others. Was raised a Methodist, and if you know Charles Wesley's thing about, do all the good you can in all the ways you can. And one of the things that came out of my Fulbright was I taught my workshop, Finding Your Voice, at a shelter for victims of domestic violence and the sex trade and sexual violence in Kerala. And after that workshop, my husband had accompanied me, although he stayed in another room because having a man there would have been sensitive for some of the things we were working on. But he was very moved by the work that the shelter was doing. And he asked the woman who runs the shelter on the way home, we shared a auto rickshaw. He said, "What do you need more than anything?" And she said, "We need a vehicle." And she said, "We get calls in the middle of the night from desperate women and their children, and we have no way to rescue them." And before I knew it, my husband had said, "We're going to raise you the money for that." And I said, "We are?" But that started this organization that my husband and I have run ever since, called Wheels for Women. We partner with the shelter, and I have access to unlimited number of young people with incredible talent in the theater department at Ithaca College. And every year we produce a cabaret to raise money for this organization, Wheels for Women. And we train victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, and the sex trade as auto rickshaw drivers, and thus giving them a way to move towards financial stability and away from their abusers. And I guess this is kind of a roundabout way just to say that I feel like Fulbright really amped up that idea of being in service to others. That's what I think I learned from my experience. And I also, frankly, my father sold macaroni and my mother was a high school dropout. And I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts. And that I was offered this chance to live in India for 6 months, all expenses paid. I feel like I have something to give, I have to give back now. And that's why I'm involved with the Fulbright Association, because I feel indebted to Fulbright for the rest of my life for the experience that the experiences that it has offered me.
Oh, thank you, Kathleen. That was beautiful. I appreciate you sharing. To whom much is given, right? Much is required. That's so lovely. Pauline, I'd love to know, I don't mean to throw you on the spot here, but I would love to know a little bit more about how your time abroad and your experiences in Tunisia, how they shape and perhaps fuel your work as an entrepreneur.
So I was thinking about this question, and I think coming out of college and having an international experience like this, where you're sort of thrown to a very open, unstructured space in a way, and also having to adjust to a new culture internationally, it makes me think about more and more like those skills that I learned, those soft skills of understanding a different culture and understanding someone that comes from a different culture is a lifelong skill, especially more and more where professions require you or ask you to have a global mindset and to you in bigger businesses, you have to interact with people from different cultures. And I think that is really crucial now, and an advantage and a skill that that employers are looking for. So after I did my master's, I worked for an international nonprofit, World Monuments Fund, that works in historic preservation. And that was a skill that was really important there when talking to colleagues in Cambodia or talking to colleagues in Peru or Tunisia, or China. So it was actually that Fulbright experience of the being on that Fulbright and being forced into a situation and really learning to really understand and be open I think is actually a very important skill now in life for many people. So I do encourage individuals coming out of college, even as young as college, to really consider a Fulbright student fellowship, because it is, despite it taking 1 year out of potentially, hitting the ground running and going into a job and a career, that 1 year is actually, you're gaining skills that you can apply, and you can apply for the rest of your life in whatever job that may be, and is an asset, I think. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's very much the skills, being open-minded and being open to different cultures, as well as being open to new opportunities, is something that I embrace and apply for my business as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Pauline. And you've really teed us up into what I would am imagining will be our last segment here. And that's kind of talking about current involvement and also maybe words of wisdom or insight for those seeking to get involved with Fulbright. So I'll especially turn to Candace and Bianca if they would like to share first. I'd love to know, in addition to your involvement with activities like this panel today, how are you hoping to stay engaged with Fulbright going forward?
I'll start. So since coming back from my Fulbright, I've been engaged with several panels, a couple of them with the World Affairs Council of San Antonio. So thank you, Armin, for those lovely opportunities. Also with the Chamber of Commerce's, especially the Polish one, and also the Australian one, just because I'm part of the Australian one, and that whole that community, right? The community of mutual understanding and being somewhere else versus where you were born is prevalent in the United States, and it's prevalent everywhere now, as Pauline mentioned. And so a lot of different chambers like to talk about different people's different experiences. And the other things I have done is I became the Fulbright liaison for the University of Houston downtown. Bianca, I think, is also a Fulbright liaison, and we're at sister schools. And so we put forth effort to educate our community. For me, the community is UHD, about what is a Fulbright, what does it entail, how do you do it, how can I help you be successful in a non-threatening, safe environment, because no one works for me, right? I'm just a faculty member, so it's a very safe zone. I always tell them, everything is off the record, and I keep up with my Fulbright training. And going forward, I feel very, very inspired by everyone on here. And I would like to go and look into the specialist arena. So thank you, Kathleen, for that. And then tagging on to Pauline. I'm so grateful Pauline is here, because Pauline, not to pick on her, she's the only one without a PhD. And I want people to understand, and I'm so grateful she's here. You don't have to have a PhD to go on a Fulbright. The student Fulbrighters that I met in Poland, Poland is big for Fulbright. I probably met 20 of them. They were so energetic and tight, and they had so much fun. I just think that the Fulbright is such an amazing experience. And you come in one way, it's like you come in one shape and you come out another, like through a Play-Doh press. And I really like how Pauline mentioned that it's entrepreneurial and it's okay to give up a year of your life. And I would absolutely encourage my daughter to do the same. So hopefully that's it. There is one more thing, if I could just quickly add, Trey, is about the compassion and understanding. It was really interesting being in Poland, which was so pivotal in World War II, right? And there was so much death there and hard feelings. And I think that part of where I was located in terms of, feeling compassion and having that mutual understanding for others, it would be hard for me to find a different experience where, I met with so much sort of pain and people didn't want to talk about certain things and it was whispered, and I don't know, it was just such an amazing experience. I'll be forever grateful. Bianca, I think you're up.
Absolutely. Just like Candace, I am forever grateful. The experience really deepened my networks, obviously, and connections with Russians and the academics and who I met and the students. I, again, had a unique situation to say yes. Students will pull me to the side and say, would you like to go here? I'm like, yeah, I do. I want to see what this is looking like, how you're living, all of it. So I was really able to build a diverse network, and my job now really is to create an impact in different areas for my university. Two pillars of Fulbright I know is partnering for a better world and bringing the world closer together through education. And the work that I've done with Fulbright as a liaison is I've brought Fulbrighters on campus from all parts of the world. My colleagues, I've worked with Fulbright in applications and reviewing and things like that. And also, I really want to focus the next year. I really focused on faculty, but now I'm shifting over to students, and specifically first generation students. I'm in a university with a high number of first generation students. So how do I put Fulbright and first gen students together, right? I want to make sure that they are aware of the opportunities here and how really this can impact and shape their lives. There will be students who are going to sit there just like me, who's going to say, oh my gosh, I totally could do this, or I think I would be a great candidate for this. And I want them to know that there is an opportunity here. So I'm a part of trying to transform our community and really working with our first gen students and letting them know about Fulbright or programs that are similar to Fulbright that they should take advantage of.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to have to get to a rapid fire of questions now, because we're now at that point where we've got to start winding it down. That's how a great panel just happens fast, right? So I'm going to give you all some, in a moment, I'm going to ask all of you to give a final word of wisdom or insight to the group for anybody out there interested in doing a Fulbright. And that's going to just be a word. But before we do that, I wanted to see if anybody had some insights to share with questions that have come in from the audience. Questions like, how much diplomacy is involved in doing a Fulbright? Is that a responsibility of a Fulbrighter? Are there countries harder to get into? Other questions like, what exactly are the different types of programs? So if anybody can give some rapid responses to questions like that, I would welcome it. And then we'll turn to that closing word and final word of insight. Kathleen?
Well, I'm going to address the first one about diplomacy and just say that part of the application asks, what makes you qualified to be an ambassador? And that's part of what your job is, because if you think about it, when I'm walking through the streets of Islamabad and someone comes up to me, often I might be the first person from the United States that person has ever met. And so I have a big responsibility. And also coming back, and I would love to just tell the quickest story, because it's one of my favorite stories about being an ambassador for Pakistan when I came back to the US. When I flew into Syracuse airport, they had lost my luggage somewhere between Pakistan and Syracuse. And I went in to fill out the thing, where you go, my bag looks like this and everything. And the woman behind the counter said, okay, so where, she's like writing it down. She's not even looking at me. And she said, so where were you coming from? And I said, Islamabad, Pakistan. And she stops and goes, really? What was that like? And for the next 5 minutes, I told her about the incredible experience I had, about the hospitality, which Candace talked about, which in both India and Pakistan is just astonishing. I have to say, it puts the US to shame. And Another guy came from the back, and by the end of me telling them about my trip, the two of them were standing there listening, rapt. And I thought, I've completely changed their perception of Pakistan. And I felt like right there, I had done my job as a Fulbrighter and as an ambassador.
Awesome. I love you sharing that. It makes me, so many young people right now talk about wanting to be a social media influencer. And I feel like what you did right there is demonstrated that influencers aren't just on social media. So thank you, Kathleen. Other thoughts to some of those rapid fire questions, or would somebody like to give a word of wisdom or insight to the audience considering a Fulbright?
I do want to encourage those who may be on the administrative side to please consider Fulbright. Again, I didn't think I was going to be eligible for it, but yes, there are plenty of programs out there, and it's even better if you have an institution who really supports internationalization efforts and is really behind a Fulbright. Last thing is that, Fulbright is all about breaking down barriers and about global engagement. So if this is something something you're interested in, something that you're passionate about, which I totally am, please definitely take a look at Fulbright and the many wonderful opportunities out there.
I am happy to say that if anyone is an undergraduate in college or even in high school, I think something to think about is Fulbright is an opportunity right after college. And as I said earlier, it might delay your ideas of a career for a year, but it's definitely worth it. And you're gaining professional skills on that Fulbright that you can't really do anywhere else that you would start if you were starting in an office job in the city that you're in. So I really encourage that.
Great,
I
thank you.
I taught a international study abroad class this past spring, which of course we didn't go anywhere, but we had to teach a version of the class, even though we had COVID. And what I found in this class is that it was about Poland, compare and contrast growth and technology between Poland, the EU, and the United States. And I found that my students thought Poland was in the middle of nowhere, backwards, recovering from World War II and full of farmers. And that's okay, because when they left the class, every single student was excited. They were so excited about Poland, and they're like, yeah, I still want to go to Paris, but then I'm going to go to Poland. And on that note, I'm this year, hopefully this spring, I'll be bringing several dozen students to Poland, and even maybe one of the World Affairs Council's employees wants to go with me, I've heard, to sort of share the enthusiasm and learn more about the culture.
Wonderful. Let's give it up to our panelists. If you are out there, give a snap or a clap to this awesome group. I know that we could continue going, but I want to be respectful of the time that I've been told to keep it within. So please, I want to say thank you to the World Affairs Council, to the Fulbright Association, to the many individuals and organizations who are doing the work of education, advocacy, service, the work of fostering a more peaceful and interconnected world that values diversity, models respect for all people and cultures. Thank you, Armin. Thank you, our friends at the World Affairs Council, for hosting the panel today. Thank you to our awesome panelists. What a joy to be with you. Armin, the Zoom microphone is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gwynn. Appreciate that. What a great program, and so informative. And you could tell by the questions that there are not only people interested in learning more, and I see that Carol had a question about language, and thank you for answering that. What we'll do, excuse me, what we'll do is we'll send out the recording of this program to everyone who registered and provide the contacts of those who participated today. So if you have a specific question for them, I'm certain they'll be happy to answer those questions. Thanks to Andrew Hill, who was kind of summarizing the quotes. Really appreciated that for things that stood out from each of the guests. So thank you, Andrew, for doing that. And let's hear it for Dr. Gwynn for moderating. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your passion, and for doing a great job. So thank you for doing that. Kathleen, Pauline, Bianca, and Candace, thank you for making time for us. I know your schedules are very busy, for joining us. I appreciate it. On behalf of our interns, Rachel, Jimena, and Samantha, thank all of you for tuning in. Our next program is next week. It is a hybrid. We are limiting it to just under 30 people because of safety reasons. But we are zooming in the author of 100 Sweet Promises. Register for that. It's also available on Zoom. Samantha just put the link up there. We're also always looking for your support. If you're not a member, please find out how to become one. And also, if you wanted to make a gift so we could continue making these kinds of programs available to you. Thank you again, lastly, for this very valuable information. What you heard today is what our mission is all about, which is to learn from other cultures, other governments, other entities around the world. And what you saw today were basically diplomats who were representing the U.S. informally and sometimes formally in the nations that they served. So quite remarkable work. They learned a lot, and I'm sure that people they touched learned a lot about us. So thank you all again, and we will see you next Thursday. Have a great day.
Thank you.